Watashi wa GM no AJ Preller desu. Watashi wa scout to shite. 20年間の渡り. No, I could,
John, your persistence, your dogged, you should be a detective in a novel, persistence paid off. And we are finally getting AJ Preller after weeks, if not months, of trying to get him to join the show.
Yeah, you certainly aided and assisted in that as well. It took months. I feel like we got the big fish. He is a great interview, brilliant guy, quirky, and he's done a fantastic job. I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. So I'm anxious to see what he wears and what he says, because he is a fun, quirky individual, as I mentioned, and I think it should be a good one.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll ask him about like baseball, Tatis, their problematic ownership situation, when some of the key injured guys are coming back. We might even ask him some basketball questions. We're those kind of guys because he loves it. You and I are going to talk about the Mets' strong start. We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, later in the show, we're going to have the head of baseball operations, president of baseball operations of the Padres, AJ Preller, who's tied for the best record in the major leagues. It's with the Dodgers and with the Mets. The Mets, who got off poorly last season and then, of course, came on like gangbusters. I never thought I'd use the word gangbusters, John, and got all the way to the NLCS against the Dodgers. Have gotten off great this year, and they've done it really on the backs of their pitching, almost the entire length of their pitching staff. I think they're for real. I think that they've shown a real level of competence from the ownership front office down. John, you were there again yesterday. I'm there tomorrow. What do you think of the group?
Yeah, I suspect that it is a really good team. I know some people point to the schedule, but they won the first game against Philly. It's only one game. They swept Toronto. They swept the Cardinals, who I think are probably okay, not terrible. They've been extremely impressive, and they've done it really with an offense. Now, Lindor has been brilliant the last week or so. And basically, it's been him and Pete, right? I don't think the other guys have really hit very well at all. It was supposed to be arguably the best lineup in baseball. Hasn't been that. So they're going to get more offense than we've seen so far. We've got McNeil and Alvarez coming back, so there'll be more offense there. I don't know if this pitching is going to continue this, 2.3 ERA or so, 2.4 now. Other than worries about Diaz, I think we have to feel pretty great about this Mets team right now.
Yeah, because I agree with you. They're probably not going to keep up a 2-something ERA for the entire season. But you know what good teams do is they get what they need when they need it. A lot of Met history is like, oh, we are only 44 keys on the piano and we're out of tune. Like we're hitting but not pitching and we're losing because of it. We're pitching but not hitting. This reminds me to some degree. Last year, the season begins for the Yankees without Garrett Cole. The 5 guys who stepped in through the point till Cole came back pitched great. Like their combined effort was like Cole's solo effort to win the Cy Young Award the previous year. And you're seeing what the Mets are doing now with Manaea and Montas out, and all 5 guys going well. And really, your point, the whole bullpen, except for maybe Diaz, going well at a time where Soto didn't get off great. Lindor, to your point, until the last week, not great. We haven't seen the Vientos of last year yet. We haven't seen a single at bat from McNeil and Alvarez. And this is where the Mets are. I think it's all encouraging about a team that suddenly, instead of finding the misstep, is finding the right step.
Yeah, I mean, David Stearns and company have done a great job with the pitching. They did great last year, signing Severino and Manaea. This year, we have 3 out of their top 7 pitchers are out. We thought that was the weakness even before those 3 pitchers went out. We forget Blackburn also. It's really been amazing. I'm wondering, do you I'm starting to think he may be right, except obviously there are exceptions. Max Fried's been incredible with the Yankees. Maybe it's better if you can find the pitchers for cheap. Maybe it's better to do it this way. Now, I don't think there's every executive can figure it out and get guys who are going to improve. And I think, Hefner's great, the pitching lab, something. I think maybe there aren't a lot of teams that can do it, but it's certainly working for the Mets not to go crazy for these pitchers. They went for Yamamoto, who looks like
Yes.
the best pitcher in the National League right now, and he was only 25 years old at the time. So that's an exception. But to go for the 29-year-old and up pitcher and give out 200 million, I think in their case, at least, it's the right move. I don't know that everybody can do it though.
I think they've had that discipline with everybody, right? Also, like with Pete Alonso. I just think talking to Stearns these last couple of years in particular, his thing is, look, if you sit with the charts, players in their 30s generally go down. Not all of them, but I'm not arrogant enough to know which ones won't go down. So I'd rather stay away from long commitments when the percentages are that guys will go down. And John, to me, I wrote about this a little bit the other day in the Post, was I thought that the beginning of this year was important because Met history is not filled with a lot of success followed by success. There's these pockets of moments and then they fall apart. And I think that the Cone Stearns Mendoza thing is changing the narrative for this organization. That suddenly you think of it as they're going to figure it out, that they're smart, that they're patient, that they're steady, that there's good leadership from the top down right into the clubhouse with a guy like Lindor. So I feel like the most important thing that's happened to the Mets is Cohn wanted to create something sustainable, Dodger-like, Yankee-like, etc. I think, it's still early. It feels like we're seeing the beginning of something sustained here because of what the leadership is doing.
Yeah, I mean, he waited for Stearns for years. Milwaukee was able to keep him, even if he wasn't their GM that final year. By rules, it was fair, and they understood it. And they waited for him, and they knew that he would be good because look how many times he made the playoffs in Milwaukee in the smallest market. So he's a New Yorker. He's going to do better when you have a $300 million plus payroll than a $100 million plus payroll or even minus payroll. So they knew that one. The one that gets me is Mendoza. I think he's been great. I didn't endorse that move at the beginning. At that point he was the bench coach of a disappointing Yankee team. He'd been there a while, so there were some very good teams as well. You just never know with a bench coach. It's another Yankee moving to the Mets. I had a lot of questions, and I was 100% wrong. I'll admit that. I think the guy is fantastic in the clubhouse, and I think in terms of strategy, he's pretty good. Let's see. I think he's going to be tested by Diaz the way things are going with Diaz, but I think his strategy is on point as well.
John, it's another thing to give a check mark to, I think, Stearns in particular slash Cone, which is it would have been very easy not to pick a Yankee bench coach, right? Like Buck Showalter is the guy he's replacing. The animus between Mets and Yankee fans, like to bring him over. I
Yeah,
think
how many managers are there? I mean, I'm not a historian, but how many ex-Yankees have become Met managers, right? And some of them have done pretty well. I mean, Willie Randolph was a good manager, I think, but it's a long, long list. I mean, it started at the beginning, right, with Casey Stengel. You think there are other places to find a manager, but in any case, they found a very good one here in the Bronx, up here in the Bronx.
I'm sorry, John. The thing that really struck me about Mendoza, to the point of what you were saying, is I talked to Mendy quite a lot when he was with the Yankees, and I recognize only in retrospect when he became manager of the Mets that he was always very cooperative. He's as nice a guy as you could deal with, but he kept his answers short. He didn't go off and things, and I was like, I never felt like the special thing. Then he becomes manager of the Mets. And I'm like, oh, he didn't want to campaign for a job or look like he was stepping on Boone. I actually ended up retroactively having even more respect
Yeah.
for Mendy because, like, all of a sudden we became the Mets manager, and now I would ask a question about a tactical move, and he'd be like, have 7 reasons why he did it. I was like, man, now I have a lot more respect for the man because he didn't try to Bigfoot Boone, and I have a lot more respect for his baseball acumen than I ever had because he never campaigned for the job, any job, while doing it. I just end up having a lot of respect for the guy.
I mean, we didn't know. That's on me. We didn't know, but the teams that knew, right? And very smart teams interviewed him, right? Preller, who we're going to have on, interviewed Mendoza. Cleveland is a team that interviewed Mendoza. They were all very impressed by him. But you know what? He is a New Yorker. like I said, I thought it was a gamble to bring in a guy who would never manage in the major leagues to manage a team that's going to have the highest payroll in baseball. But just another great move by Stearns. He's really, I mean, nobody bats 1,000 as he conceded in the press conference yesterday. But he's done pretty well. He's come as close as you can come, probably.
Yeah, and competence begets confidence. Like you keep doing this enough and you keep hitting on Severino or Mania or Clay Holmes is a starter or Griffin Canning is better than he showed with the Angels. You start doing this enough, there's a confidence that's bred in the whole organization. John, obviously one of the teams that has done a great job of accumulating talent is the San Diego Padres. I think the Dodger people said that they were the toughest team they played in the postseason last year. They went the distance in a division series with them. The Padres are really, really good again out of the gate this year. We're going to talk about them with their president of baseball operations, AJ Preller, if you stick with us on the show with Joel, Sherman, and John. We keep getting timely guests, and this one is very timely. AJ Preller has run baseball operations for the last 11 plus years in San Diego. And at the time we're speaking to him, he's tied with the Dodgers and the Mets. Dodgers in the NL West, then the Mets for the best record in the major league. So, AJ, we appreciate you joining us on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. We've been talking about this, I think, since the end of last season. So I
Yes.
think,
Talking
yeah,
talking
this
about
is,
this means I've been begging you.
I think there was some begging by me in spring training as well. It wasn't a good look, but we're glad to have you. And look,
Thrilled.
if there's a place to start, AJ, I mean, I just wrote down after the 2023 season, you lose Blake Snell, Soto, Waka, Hader, Lugo. I mean, those are exceptional players. After last year, you lost Kim and Profar, who were very important to your team. Higashioka, who helped steady your catching. Musgrove is going to miss this season. Tommy John surgery. Yu Darvish hasn't played yet. You have a couple of guys, important guys on the injured list, notably Jackson Merrill. Why does your team keep winning when the expectation was you didn't do anything especially large this offseason before the Nick Pivetta signing, obviously? It's kept winning. Why?
yeah, I mean, I think probably a few reasons. I think, first and foremost, like the nucleus and the core group of players. And I think, we've talked about that, here in San Diego over the last 10 years is, first you need Don Welke, one of the great scouts and a guy that one of my best friends in life. He always used to talk about getting ability and then stability. And I think that's kind of the way we've designed it here is that, year in, year out, every group does, looks a little bit differently at different things. Obviously, flexibility is important, but I think when you have that core group, and I'm talking about Tatis and Machado and, Bogarts, Cronenworth, Darvish, Musgrove, there may be some ups and downs, from time to time or year to year, but in general, over the course of a 10-year period, we're starting every year with a nucleus group that's talented enough to get to the playoffs. And then it's our job to supplement that and add to that. And, I also think, the players have done a great job the last couple of years of coming together and kind of defining what they want to be about. And they've done a really good job with Mike Schilt and the staff in doing that. So, again, I think having that core group, we've been able to withstand some injuries. We've had some different faces come in here. We've added some pieces that have helped us at different times, even though you mentioned some of the guys that have left the building. But that's probably the biggest reason why we've had some success here.
You looked very, very sad two winter meetings ago when you traded Juan Soto. You didn't look, you don't like to give up big talent like that, but that trade looks pretty good now from both sides, frankly, but particularly from your side where you ended up with King and traded Thorpe to get Cease. So you got two top rotation starters for a rental. Frankly, I think you probably should have been in the running for Executive of the Year. I think you're probably overlooked a little bit there. But tell me how that trade did come about, and was I correct? Were you as sad as you looked that day when you had to trade Juan Soto?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, like I think all these, the different possibilities and deals. It's a little bit of moment in time. I think dealing for a player like a Juan Soto and having him in your organization, he's obviously one of the most impactful players in the game. So, we obviously made a big deal to get him, and that was, those are tough deals to make and pull the trigger on because we knew we were trading guys in that deal that are going to be good big leaguers for a long time. But we felt like we had a team that can win a World Series, and I think you need super impactful players to do it, and then you got to be able to adapt in this job. And every year is a little bit different. Every challenge is different. And when we looked at our roster last year, I think kind of the sadness is I think we all wanted to see what a 5+ Juan Soto season was going to look like. A free agent 1 year was going to look like. Yankee fans found out it was incredibly impactful and almost won them a World Series. But we also knew we had some different holes that we had to fill on the team, and making a 5-for-1 deal, 5-for-2 deal, that enabled us to get a catcher, multiple starting pitchers. Obviously what kind of ended up being with King and potentially Cease, and with Drew Thorpe being involved, and then Vasquez and Brito had helped round out our club. And I think it's one of those rare deals in baseball that honestly worked out for both teams. I think it's fun to debate. Hey, what did it mean for the Yankees? What did it mean for the Padres? I look at it like it was a deal that helped everybody, kind of moment in time, and what we were trying to do. And so I think that was all part of the Juan Soto for the years that he was here in San Diego, and we almost won a World Series with Juan. We got to the LCS that year against the Phillies a couple of years ago, which is what you're trying to do is go win World Series every single season. So.
AJ, just to kind of stick with the theme, King and Cease, as John pointed out, were kind of part of the Soto trade when you extend that Thorpe was this. They're in their walk year. Arazu's in their walk year. I guess if he doesn't pick up his option, Suarez is. And there was this anticipation in the offseason that you would have to make trades of some of those guys, at least one of them, and you held steady. Uh, uh, why? And I guess it leads to part of a bigger umbrella question is there was a feeling that this ownership group, after the passing of Peter Seidler, wasn't going to let you keep this kind of payroll. So if you could kind of just navigate us through why you were able to keep it and how are things working with the new ownership group?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of this off season, we always go into it open minded. I think that's one of the biggest strengths for our front office is we're willing to consider all different possibilities. And anytime you get players that are coming on there, similar to Juan the year before, that are coming up to their 5+ season, you got to at least you got to at least consider different options and possibilities and what's going to make us stronger in the short term and the long term. And I think for myself, I've worked under different leadership teams. It's been Mike D, and then Ron Fowler and Peter Seidler, and then Peter and Eric Katsenda last year, and now with John Seidler taking the reins as from an ownership standpoint. The one thing everybody's had in common is that they're looking to win. They're looking to do it year in, year out, and they're open-minded. So I think from our group, we're always talking about different possibilities. We're going to listen to when teams approach us, but we're also not going to do anything that's going to prevent us from winning long term, and taking a team that we think can win this year and get back to the playoffs and win a championship, and be short sighted in that pursuit. So, again, I think this offseason we looked at it similar to the year before with Juan, and if we had a deal that we felt like was above the line from a value standpoint, we would have made that deal. And we had a lot of teams. Again, they're very attractive players that you just mentioned. So there were a lot of teams constantly calling us and talking to us about it. But we've got our metrics, the way we look at it, the way we value it. We've had years where we've been very active and we've made a lot of deals. We've had years where we haven't been that active. And I think this offseason, I think a lot of attention was put on those players because they're talented guys that. There may be a little bit of uncertainty about what was going to happen with John Seidler and the ownership group. But again, I think it's been very consistent here, like a group that wants to win, a group that's committed to winning and spending money here in San Diego. The fan base is incredible. So we explored, but ultimately, we're pretty certain of what we were trying to do.
While you explored in the winter, your team looks great as constituted. You've even with the injuries, Merrill out right now, Arise out, a few other guys. Most of your left-handed hitters seem to be out at the moment. Is it fair to say King and Cease are not going anywhere for the foreseeable future? And is there any chance? You obviously have a lot of big players on the payroll already. Any chance to re-sign them? But they're not going anywhere, are they?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think from our standpoint, like, they're huge parts of our team, leading the rotation. I think from you got to see how the year plays out. It's still super early, and I know we've played really well to start the season. And our expectation is that we have a team again, like we've seen multiple times in the last years, that can play deep into October. And if you're going to do that, you're going to do that with guys like Michael King and Dylan Cease leading the way. So that's the expectation. And we'll get into the season and kind of see how things play out. But hopefully we continue to play well, and we're looking to add. And that's always a nice position to be in as we get into the summer months.
AJ, you mentioned you were a little, more serene, sedate, like in the trade market, free agent market this offseason. One of the things that's clearly has distinguished your decade plus doing this is there's a level of fearlessness about trading from your prospect base to do what you need to do. Whether it's Soto, Tanner Scott last year, etc. Do you think it gives you some advantage at a time where it feels like a lot of front offices are stuck and afraid they're doing I know you mentioned your metrics and values, but it feels like there's real logjam of everybody thinking exactly the same and afraid to move prospects in particular. Do you think you gain some advantage because you have some fearlessness in this area?
Matt, again, I think one of the things that I think that we look at it is I think we're realistic that you're going to have to trade good players to get good players, and there's very few deals that come up now. I mean, in 11 years, you could count on, honestly, less than one hand, kind of the deals that come up. They are just these no-brainers. John Hart used to talk all the time about these deals being 51-49, 52-48. And I think from our standpoint, we understand that, one, you're going to have to trade good players to get good players. And if we get the pieces we want, Billy Beane used to tell me, he'd say, look, I've traded MVPs and Cy Youngs, and 25 years later, I'm still the GM, and we've done a lot of winning. So, we're not necessarily in these deals looking to say, hey, we've got to, we're looking to dominate the deal. If we get what we want, and we know we're going to trade a lot of good players, a lot of good Padres all across the league right now. But there's a real process to what we do. It's not like a recklessness in any way. I think sometimes, people will look and say, well, fearlessness versus recklessness. No, it's tons of time and attention. We spend a ton of time knowing the players. And I think there's a belief in our scouting group that we can go get good players every year, and that might be on a minor league free agent. That might be a smaller sign like a Profar last year or Gavin Sheets this year. That's, hitting on, Jackson Merrill or James Wood and high in the draft. That's seeing international signs like Ethan Salas or Leo DeVries. It's hard to find these players, but we have scouts that are really, really good at it, and a development system that's good at developing these guys. So that gives me the ability to have, I don't know about a little bit of an advantage, but we just have a lot of currency. We have a lot of players that have done well in other places. So there's some track record in history when teams go to trade with us. There's a feeling that, hey, we don't have to win the trade. Like if we get what we want, we're at least open to that concept and hoping to make good moves. And we just continue to have, I think a few years ago, we were, after the 2019 season, 2020, we looked up and we traded 30 something prospects in the span of a year. And a year later, we were still a top five system. A year later, we looked up and we had the ability to go trade for Hader and Soto. And then a year later, we were able to make more deals at the deadline that you just mentioned. So I think that's, those two or three reasons I think keep coming back to me. And, hopefully it's that's part of just being sustainable and being a team that over the course of a decade, has a chance to win a lot.
One trade that didn't turn out to be 51-49 or 52-48 was the Fernando Tatis trade. You traded James Shields to get Tatis. Did you have an inkling he was this good at this time? And is he now coming into his own in terms of an all-around great player? Now, Juan Soto has said he's the best player in the game. Where do you think he stands in terms of player in the game? And did you have any idea he had this kind of potential when you made that trade?
One other thing too, before we go to that, just thinking about John Hart's 51-49, we would sit in a lot of meetings in Texas when I was there as the assistant GM and involved with the scouting. And John loved offense more than any, and he would say, like self-proclaimed, maybe more than any person on the planet. So we would, we had big offenses. He always had the big offense in Cleveland, and he would get to these trades. And like we would have a loaded offense and we would need some pitching in Texas. And everyone would be like, let's trade for Cliff Lee, trade for this pitcher. And John would always go, let's go get a bat. And he go, actually, and he go, no, actually, screw that. Let's go get two bats. So I don't know if the Shields Tatis is about getting a bat, but he was a guy legitimately that I think at the time it was like Tim Anderson and Carson Fulmer were kind of identified as the top prospects. But he was a guy, and they were kind of off limits in that deal, but he was a guy that our group, we had history from the amateur international days. So we had seen him, as a young player, which always helps. So we had kind of targeted him as a guy that we wanted to focus on. He hadn't played a game yet, so he was on a backfield, kind of in a practice setting in these practice games. But our pro scouting group went in and thought, yeah, like, again, we were looking to build something. That you're playing in the NL West, you're playing against some elite teams, you're going to need elite players. And he was a guy that we thought, even though he was further away, hadn't played yet, quote unquote, there may be some more risk there. We thought he was the type of guy that could potentially be an impactful franchise kind of player. So when we made the deal, he was the key piece in the deal. And we obviously took on some of James Shields' money, and Ron Fowler and Peter Seiler were open to doing that to basically, to enable us to acquire Fernando Tatis as the key player in the deal. And obviously one of the great players in the game, and he's had, this month he's showing what he can do, which is, and I think we saw it last year in the playoffs. It was fun to see him in the playoffs because he's coming back from injuries, and to see him against the Braves and the Dodgers, some of the best players in the world, and he was as good as anybody, as impactful as anyone on the field. And he's a true five-tool talent. So, our scouts saw that before we made the deal. We were hoping that he continued to progress to be that player. We had some history on him. I think it's hopefully one of the deals that we look up in this decade as we're hopefully trying to win that World Series. And he's the type of player you need to do that.
You've been very kind with your scouting group here, mentioning your ability to keep stocking your system. I think you're one of the last executives who really highly regards human scouting to a high level, and I think you've probably benefited from that. But I wonder if you're kind of like selling yourself short a little. I can't tell you how many times I call it talking to an executive or texting with an executive at an amateur game or something, and they go, "Oh yeah, AJ's sitting 3 rows in front of me," or something like that. You're out on the road a lot, and I'm not sure anyone else does it. Now, I think you never sleep, or you're down to maybe 1 or 2 hours a night. What do you think about the concept of that you're doing something that maybe traditionally was done, but are you the last guy who goes out quite as much as you do? And what advantages do you think that provides?
I mean, everybody, does it a little bit different in these jobs. And, I think from my standpoint, like you can hurt the process at times if you don't see enough players, obviously, at times I think I can help the process and help the group. But, Chris Kemp, our scouting director, he does an incredible job. We've got Logan White, David Postman, the list goes on and on, James Keller. These are, scouts that have done it for 30 plus years and have a ton of big leaguers, in what they do. I think, eventually for me, maybe help the process a little bit. I do think it's good to get out there with your scouting group. And yeah, I think the scouts enjoy it. But again, I think from my standpoint, it's more about just like thirsting for information. John Sherrill used to talk all the time, the team with the best information wins. you know, a lot of times that's in-person looks, but we've had Dave Cameron here. You can argue, is he an analyst? Is he a scout? He's just a guy that knows baseball. We have Cody Zupnik right now from in our R&D group that just knows a lot of baseball. And then you also have guys like, in the past, Don Welke or David Post or Logan White that have scouted and seen a ton of players. So it's just fun to be part of a group that's a baseball group that values information. There's a lot of different ways to get that information. I think we're open-minded to the in-person look, and if I can help in that process, so be it. But we got a lot of talented people, and I think my job is more just to corral that information, know who to listen to when, and kind of figure out when the moment in time is to make the right, to make hopefully some good calls. So.
One thing you're known for is that you'll do almost anything to enhance your talent base, to bring talent to the Padres. I know you learned Spanish, and you're fluent or pretty close to fluent in Spanish. I want to know, there's a legend out there. I don't know, it might be apocryphal, it might be true. I don't know. Did you actually memorize 10 minutes of Japanese to try to, when you were recruiting Shohei Ohtani, to say to him, and tell me a little bit about your recruitment of Ohtani and also your efforts to trade for him, because I know that you guys were the most aggressive a couple of years ago when he was, semi-available for a second or two.
Watashi wa GM no AJ Preller desu. Watashi wa scout to shite. 20年間の渡り. No, I could, you know, it was a
Great.
fun process, like trying to recruit Shohei Ohtani multiple times. It was frustrating because we obviously didn't end up with him and he ended up up the road both times in Anaheim and LA. And now, as an organization, we've got to compete against him. So, but he's just an incredible talent. He's one of those game changers. And honestly, like, a few years ago, when we were at that trade deadline, we were talking about Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani. I think those are the moments in this job, which are many, where you kind of have to pinch yourself and be like, "Are we actually doing this?" Like, we're talking about one. Like, it's cool to be in a spot where we had players that teams wanted, but like we're actually debating about Juan Soto versus 3 years of Juan versus 2 years of Shohei. Like, which potentially would be more impactful for the Padres, and that's when it's just like, yeah, I mean, every day it's not really a job, it's just fun, but it's like that's when you're just like, yeah, this is about as good as it gets, and those were some really fun conversations. So
AJ, the talent accumulation and the success has led to the Padres, doing great in attendance. It feels like, especially with the Chargers out of town, you've become the game in town. I wonder what you think the impact. I think you've only lost once at home this year, right?
Yes.
And I wonder what you think about San Diego becoming such a baseball town because of stuff that you and your group have done.
yeah, I mean, I think again, like you're in the entertainment business, so you're supposed to put together a product that that people want to come and see and enjoy watching. So obviously that starts with accumulating great talent. My previous life, we were in Texas, and I think we drew over 3 million fans there, in what was supposed to be a football town, but it was because of guys like Josh Hamilton and Cliff Lee or Elvis Andrews or Nelson Cruz or Michael Young, or because on and on and on. It's not just like good teams; it's good teams that people want to come back to see every day, et cetera. And Southern California, San Diego is a great baseball town, and it's really it's one thing for us to talk about it and see it. It's cool when other people, media executives were coming to the playoffs last year and they're like, man, this is the best atmosphere I've seen since Fenway 10 years ago, or since, Yankee Stadium at this point in time, or, talk about like the great baseball cities like St. Louis, and San Diego's mentioned like that. That's always been part of what we've talked about here, of kind of the vision of what it looks like and what it should look like. So to see, 42,000 on a Tuesday night, packing Petco, and the energy that it brings. I think it helps our team. It helps our city. Eric Grubner and his group do an amazing job of like creating an incredible atmosphere. Petco looks literally like it was open last year. I mean, I don't know how they continue to do that with the ballpark, but it's just a fun team that people think. The biggest thing is people think the team can win the World Series, and they want to come out and see excellence. So that's kind of the marching orders from all of us in the organization, and yeah, I think it's a sense of pride, but it's just fun to see, and it's good for the game of baseball, honestly.
The collision involving Luis Ariz, who's a terrific young man and a great hitter, was very scary. And I was amazed when he was back in the clubhouse. How is he doing? Is he back, going to be back playing soon?
Yeah, I flew back last night with him to San Diego. So yeah, it's one of those scary moments in sports for sure. You don't see it as much in baseball, obviously, but yeah, I mean, it was when you see a guy, any player, and especially Luis, who just loves it and has got so much energy, such a good person, loved by his teammates, carted off the field. Probably the best news we could get in terms of, he's on the concussion protocol now, but in terms of him being able to get up and move and walk, and not having any issues with his spine, or, maybe at one point we're thinking like his jaw, did he fracture his jaw or anything like that? No, I mean, he's now on the concussion protocol, which is serious as well, but. I think him being back that night in the clubhouse gave our guys a big boost of energy. They love seeing Luis, and obviously when you see your teammate and somebody that's part of our family get carted off the field like that, was a scary moment. It's like, big night, Sunday night baseball, Astros, everybody's looking to have fun and enjoy the game, and 2 pitches in, 3 pitches in, you get hit with a dose of reality that, yeah, this is a serious moment. So our medical team that was at the ballpark there that night for the Astros did a great job, and hopefully Luis is on his way back on the field hopefully soon.
Why don't I pick up the theme? Jackson Merrill, I believe it's a hamstring injury. Can you update us on where his progress is and when you expect him? And I think maybe more important to well, not more important than Jackson Merrill, but pretty important to your overall success. Are you expecting Yu Darvish, and at what level?
Yeah, so you was with the team here this week, and he's just started throwing bullpens. So he's going to start that progression now of building up. From there, he just kind of got on the mound, for the first time from a bullpen standpoint. So now, as you guys know, he'll start facing hitters and then get into some rehab scenarios so he can build his pitch count back up. And then with Jackson, he was back in San Diego this week. Again, he's had good progress over the last couple of weeks from the hamstring, but I think like any of these tissue issues and the hamstring, you don't want to bring him back too soon, and then all of a sudden you look up and it's 2 to 3 months. So, I think he's kind of continues to progress every day. We're hoping here in the next week or so we'll continue to get good reports and can start looking at him getting back on the field.
You nearly knocked off the Dodgers last year. I was there at the end. Your offense just shut down for the last couple games. The Dodgers had that effect on a lot of people last year. Where do you think you stand right now? Obviously, that's a $399 million payroll, generally very well spent. They still have Kershaw, Otani as a pitcher, and Snell in reserve. They've done nothing to this point. It's a pretty scary team on paper. But anything can happen in a short series, and you have a very talented team. Where do you think you guys stand and stack up to that team?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's really the whole NL West. I think we joke about it as the NL West being kind of the SEC of Major League Baseball right now, but and then the National League is very strong. And, I think we've seen it the last few years. We saw the Dodgers in 20 in the playoffs. We saw them again in 22, and then again last year in 24. So we've seen them 3 times in the last 5 years. They're obviously the defending world champs. They added a ton to their roster this offseason. They got guys back healthy. So they're a big challenge. And, I think the D-backs are, a year removed from representing the National League in the playoffs. The Giants, added more guys and got Jung Hoo Lee back this year, and then adding Willie Adames. They're always well run, and you got Buster Posey kind of leading their operation, who seems to be kind of the ultimate winner. So, yeah, it's a stacked division. And the Dodgers, they won it last year. They beat us. So, at the end of the day, we thought we had one of the teams that could have won a World Series. We think we're hopefully as good as we were last year and need to build on it. But I think our group came back super hungry, super motivated. I know Schulte talks about with our players all the time. We've gotten off to a good start, but we know it's going to be a big time challenge. And the biggest thing is like you come out of the National League or the NL West and you're battle tested, for sure. You're not kind of sneaking in anymore with 87 wins in the NL West. It may be that way in some other scenarios. But for us, you're going to have to win a lot of ball games. You're going to have to play great game, great throughout the season consistently. That's just the nature of it. And again, like you understand the NL West, every year the faces change and the names change, but teams are going to keep adding. They're going to keep, bringing players throughout their systems that are going to be competitive. That's the nature of it. I think it makes you better as an executive and as an organization.
AJ, it leads to something. I asked Buster Posey about this when he was nice enough to join the show recently. And I know you grew up a Yankee fan, you're an aficionado of the era. It always seemed to me that the Yankees pushed, especially the Red Sox, to go to an uncomfortable level as far as accumulating talent, salary, etc. I wonder if the NL West is becoming kind of like the new AL East, to your point. You're not getting in with 86 or 87 or rudimentary talent. Are the Dodgers forcing all of you guys to go places like if you want to keep up with the Joneses, this is what's going to be necessary, whether it's Corbin Burns in Arizona, Willie Adames in San Francisco, your accumulation of talent. Are they kind of like what the Yankees were in the late 90s, forcing, if you're in their division, you better go to these places?
I think more like the New York columnists were at that time when it was like Verducci leads to Sherman, leads to Heyman, Feinstein mixed in, Bill Madden is kind of the veteran team you knew was going to be there all the time. You're always looking to see who was going to one up the other guy. I was thumbing
This
through
is
my
even more
paper every
impressive than
morning.
your Japanese.
Yeah, I was thumbing through. I needed to, I needed more information. So yeah, that was always like I'm sure you guys felt that competition. We feel that the same way. No, I think it's an interesting, I think, you see the debates this offseason about the super team and the value of the super teams. I think it does. Like it does make, you look at the Yankees, Red Sox, I kind of watched that documentary here a few months ago when it was out talking about the 03, 04 Red Sox. I think excellence always forces other teams to raise the bar, like in any industry, any field, et cetera. So, again, you can debate, what it all means, everything, but I do think when you know that the bar is raised and the bar is high, in whatever, whatever arena you're in, and for us in the National League West, and having a team and teams there that push you, I think that's all part of what we've seen. It's kind of an arms race in the National League, and I think you see it in the other divisions as well.
This will be the last question for me. The Japanese was very impressive. I think that was even more impressive than the recitation of the New York sports writers. AJ is from Huntington Station, Long Island, so he followed sports from a very young age. Obviously, knows us all. I actually met AJ when he was I think, a 21-year-old Cornell student as a job seeker in Anaheim. You may not remember, but 1999 winter meetings. Let's humanize you a little bit. I know that we've given the impression that you're working 24 hours a day, but that's not quite true. You work 23 hours and you play basketball for 1 hour a day, I believe. So I remember a couple years ago when you were in here and you go, when you stay at the hotel, you find a place to play basketball. You ran up against one of the top five, I think, I'm not an expert like you are, recruits in the country, and it actually played them. You were a high school player, I think, though, right? So you're a pretty serious player. Tell me about that, because you didn't let me write about it at the time, but I thought it was pretty interesting who you ended up playing with, and how did you do?
This is why I avoided this podcast for about 8 months, because my guess is I figured something like this was coming. But yeah, I do enjoy all the people that play against me, which is probably a lot over the years, because I enjoy playing basketball. But they're probably like, yeah, this guy's horrendous. But yeah, a few years ago, I went to a Lifetime Fitness 2 years ago, Lifetime Fitness in New York, kind of the famous one where I'd seen like some of the NBA players were going to play. End up asking some younger players that were there if they wanted to go play. A lot of these guys now, they train all the time. They don't play anymore, especially not when they see, old man, over here just like just shooting around on the side. So they end up coming back a few minutes later and saying, yeah, let's play 3-on-3. They gave me one of their friends and one of the other guys that was in the gym, and we ended up playing. They were very good. It was competitive games. But yeah, we get done with it. I asked, obviously I recognized at one point that one of the guys looking in the gym, I kind of looked up and I was like, wait, is that Carmelo Anthony? I didn't put two and two together. But it was one of the players was his son, that I guess is one of the top players in the country. I think he just won MVP of the Jordan Brand Classic or whatever. And then the other player was a phenomenal player. And he later on, I asked him, so, who are you talking to? What colleges? He rattled off Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, every blue blood college that's out there. And it was Boogie Fland who ended up going to Kentucky and then going to Arkansas with John Calipari. So, yeah, it was a fun day. It kind of humbled a little bit to see some super talented young players, but we actually did get a win in that 3-on-3. So it was
Good.
fun. But yeah, I enjoy that, and that's definitely something that I enjoy doing. So
Hey, I didn't ask you what your real name is, so I think I behaved pretty well, right?
the key though is hearing more about Joel's basketball background. I didn't know Joel actually. John Sally and the boys. He told me in spring training that he was
Yeah,
he
my
was
my,
on.
my sixth grade team. He was on my same. We grew up in the same project house together. He was on it, and another guy who played at West Virginia Tech with Sedale 3. We had a good sixth grade team. But John said the saddest he ever saw you was the Soto trade. I think the saddest I ever saw you was in spring training. You had a leg injury, right? And you couldn't play basketball. And you said you were watching a ton of college, and I know you and I kind of every once in a while bond over NBA because I love watching the NBA also. So we got the playoffs started. As a way to close this, you want to? I've thought all year we're playing a bunch of games so Boston and Oklahoma City can play in the finals. I don't think I've changed my mind though. Watching Ant play really is something, and seeing this version of Kawhi healthy again kind of makes me wonder about the Clippers ceiling. But what do you think about the NBA playoffs?
Yeah, I got into like the college scene at the end because of St. John's, basically. I mean, I enjoy them and grew up watching them as a kid, and then seeing what they did this year was so much fun to watch. But I don't, the NBA is more about, like, I think more like what you said. I think it's interesting just seeing the biggest dynamic to me is kind of seeing the younger teams. What is OKC? What's Minnesota with Anthony Edwards? The Houston Rockets versus kind of the Lakers and the Warriors here in the next couple of weeks, and then seeing who comes out of the East. I think whether it's the Cavs and Celtics real, and how that all plays out. So I don't have as much from the team standpoint. Once in a while, I still watch some baseball and watch the Padres. But yeah, the NBA playoffs take a peek at. Probably not as much as the college basketball this year, but I think just seeing those younger teams in the West and how that all plays out, that's what I'm gonna want to see.
Well, the work you're doing with the Padres is obviously terrific. The team has been a pretty strong contender for several years now, as we mentioned at the top. It's tied for the best record in the sport as we head towards the end of April. It's a long way to go, but you have a lot of talent, and we always enjoy you. Even though it takes us a long time to get you, when we do get you, we really do appreciate you joining us on the show.
I appreciate having you guys having me. I know I know it took a little bit to get on. And John, I do remember that in Anaheim. That was that was right behind meeting Ned Coletti as a highlight of my trip there to Anaheim.
Wow, that's high praise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
John and I, of course, thank AJ Preller for joining us on the show. John, hit or error?
Well, we haven't talked much Yankees on the show, so I'm going to give a hit out to Trent Grisham, who came from the Padres in a deal, in the big deal, Juan Soto deal, and he was kind of like a throw-in to make the Yankees pay a little bit more money. And I don't know how enthused they were at the time, but I think they are pretty enthused right now. He's a terrific defensive player, and he's giving you any offense, it's a plus, and he's given them big offense at this point with a 1,093 OPS, 6 home runs. I gave Ben Rice a hit recently in a week, and I think Trent Grisham deserves it. It seems like a lot of things have been predictable. The teams you expect to be at the top have been at the top. The stars are all kind of firing and doing well, but there are some surprise stars, and right for now, at least, Trent Grisham is one of them.
Well, I will say, I think actually the Yankees liked him a great deal. And I think it was proven again in the offseason because he did not come off a season where you would think they'd instantly tender him his contract in his walk year. And they, at a time where Hal Steinbrenner was counting pennies towards that top luxury tax, and they gave him, they agreed to a $5 million deal with him for him to come back. And I agree with you, John. He's been a difference maker for them early in the season as they've weathered, he's part of the weathering of the loss, him and Rice in particular, of Giancarlo Stanton early in the year. John, I'm going to give a hit out. Also, is this a record? Me and you doing hits, and I'm going
No,
to.
we've been pretty positive at
Oh,
times,
okay.
occasionally.
So I'm going to stick with it. And I think you touched on this in your column today. Everyone should go read John always. He's in
That's nice of
nypost.com.
you.
But I'm going to give a hit to the Met fans who are coming back in large numbers, as Steve Cohen hoped they would. There's been a lot of commitment financially and talent-wise. It was namely Soto to do that kind of contract, and they went to the NLCS last year. And John, I don't know about you, is like I say this selfishly. I like working and writing when there's a big crowd and they're part of the theater of it all. And you could feel that crowd again. It's April, a time where traditionally you don't get the largest crowds. The Mets are way up, and their fans really love the team as they did last year. Even now, no OMG. I haven't seen Grimace show up yet, but the fans are totally into this team, and I love covering a game where it's a big house and the fans are into every pitch. And so good for the Met fans to have something to be this excited about and be coming out in large numbers for.
Yeah, the weather was crummy again last night, at least by my standards, and it's been basically crummy all except for Saturday. Uh, the Knicks were playing to draw 35,000. I know the Phillies were in town. That was pretty good. 150,000. The Cardinals. I don't think the Cardinals are really a big draw. I mean, it'd be kind of a medium draw, I think, particularly with them resetting this year. 150,000 for 4 games. That's pretty good for the Cardinals, I think. I know they had a Brendan Nimmo jersey giveaway in there and a Mr. Met bobblehead. I don't know whether that lures people, maybe a little bit, but it's exciting around the Mets. It's good. As somebody Met said, it's good to be a Met. I can't remember last night, it really feels
Looks
that way right
Lindor,
now.
right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, it's good to be a Met. I think that is right. The fans are into it, and the fact they gave Soto a standing ovation. That was great. I know that I wasn't quite as supportive in my column, so give them credit. He does deserve that. I think it's nice to give a guy a little bit of a boost when he's doing struggling, which struggling for him was a 120 something OPS plus, but for him it was struggling and still not up to normal standards. So I thought that was great as well. So excellent. Very good. I'm with you on the hit there with the Mets fans.
Yeah, Philly fans did it for Trey Turner, right? A couple of years ago.
Right.
He
And
was
that's
struggling,
shocking,
and
knowing the Philly fans. And the Met fans are a little nicer than Philly fans,
I
right?
think they might have done it for Alex Boehm also at a point where he was critical, right, of the fan base. A couple of maybe I'm getting old. I don't remember these things great. But anyway, the Met fans have been coming out. It's been a great environment to cover games in. Always great is Tommy Hogan, our producer, who helps us navigate the show every week. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to the show, please rate and review us. There's the New York Post Sports YouTube page. Give us a view. And please continue to stick with us through the season on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.